China has been a constant in the world for over 3,000 years. Not just the nation of China, but the idea of China. The Chinese people had the idea that China is supposed to be united. This has allowed China to fracture and reform time and time again throughout history, while still maintaining a unified culture and people. This cycle of fracture and reform has led to many different dynasties controlling China, but eventually another dynasty will always take the place of a disunited China. If you are a fan of alternate history, you may have seen the possible history video of how Rome can never be China. In this video, he explains how Rome had geographic and societal issues that wouldn't allow a cycle of fracture and reform like in China. In this video, he also mentions how Greece could be more likely to be like China, but he still mentions how it would be unlikely or impossible for Greece or any other Mediterranean civilization to be like China. In this video, I will disregard these reasons that Greece cannot be like China, and I will make a Greek empire with its own cycle of fracture and reform. The background to the scenario starts with the Greek colonies of antiquity around the Mediterranean and Black Sea, from around 500 to 400 BC. In 400 BC, there are extensive Greek colonies around the Mediterranean and Black Sea. They are not united politically, but are united through Greek language and culture. Also at this point, much of the Greek world is controlled by the Achaemenid Persians, and wars have been fought between the Greeks and the Persians. In 356 BC, Alexander the Great is born in Macedonia, and is born into a world where the Greeks are fighting against the Persians. Macedonia is considered to be on the edge of the Greek world, but Alexander conquers the Persian Empire and spreads Greek influence into the east, forming one of the most important empires in history. In my scenario, the divergence point is when Alexander lives around 15 years longer than usual, allowing him further conquest in the west and allowing him to consolidate his empire and expand Greek language and culture farther than did in our timeline. In this scenario, Alexander the Great dies in 308 BC instead of in 323 BC. And at the end of his life, his empire spans from Roman Italy to Bactria and Afghanistan. His empire is often considered the first Greek dynasty, as it controls the core of Greek territories. This is also debated, as many Greek territories such as Syracuse and Bosporia were never under Alexander's control, and he never claimed the title of Emperor of the Greeks, meaning that this is not necessarily considered the first Greek empire, or at least not the first Greek dynasty. Even though Alexander did consolidate his empire more in this scenario than in real life, he still conquered too much too fast. And upon his death, Alexander's generals, or Diadochi, fight each other for control of his empire. These are the borders of the Greek world by 250 BC. Not all these states are fully Greek-speaking or fully Greek culturally, but all of them have a large degree of Hellenic influence, which leads them to be considered the Greek world. The Seleucids in Persia and the Ptolemies in Egypt have come out as the most powerful nations in this new Greek world. Hellas and Thrace are also important, as they control the old Greek territories before the expansion of Alexander, and the old Greek capitals of Athens and Pella. These new Greek states continue to fight each other, and two of these states consolidate all of the others. The Seleucid dynasty conquers into Egypt and Anatolia, creating the state of Asia based on the Greek name for Anatolia. And a set of alliances between Hellas, Syracuse, and Italia worked together to conquer much of the western Mediterranean, including Carthage, as well as the Black Sea coast. This is the first time that the idea of Greece being united comes up, as both sides claim the title of Emperor of the Greeks, and they say that they will reform Alexander's empire. By 127 BC, Hellas conquered Asia and finally reunited the Hellenic Empire under the Athenian dynasty. This Athenian dynasty is either considered the first or second Greek empire, and is considered the first Greek dynasty. During the Athenian dynastic rule, many great wonders were constructed or expanded upon. These wonders include the construction of the Great Athenian Mall, with spoils from war, the expansion of the Lighthouse of Alexandria, and the Great Pyramid of Babylon. Along with these great wonders constructed, many conquests were undertaken during the Athenian dynasty's rule. These include Gaul, Arabia, and Nubia, along with other border territories to the north and south. During this dynasty's reign, Christianity began to spread and eventually became the state religion. The Athenian dynasty reached its height by 234 AD, and quickly after this height, Germanic migrations started to cause instability in the empire, leading it to fall apart by the mid 3030s AD. This is the second time that the Greek Empire had fractured, similarly to China, as China has had many periods of disunity throughout its history, such as the Ten Kingdoms period. But, just like how China has always reunited, just as the PRC has reunited it today, the Greek Empire will also reunite. The period after the collapse of the Athenian Empire is the most divided the Greek world has been since before Alexander's empire, and this period is known as the 20 Kingdoms period in Greek history. The most powerful of these kingdoms were Persia, Aegyptus, Byzantium, and Italia. During the next 50 years, rigorous fighting ensued between these 20 kingdoms, leading to three coming out on top. The Italians expanded to Gaul, Dacia, and Bosporia, creating the Kingdom of Europa. The Egyptians conquered across North Africa into Hispania and Arabia, while Persia reestablished the Kingdom of Asia by conquering into Central Asia, Mesopotamia, and Anatolia. By 454, the Egyptians reunited the Hellenic Empire, founding another great Hellenic dynasty. During the Egyptian dynasty, many great scientific discoveries occurred, and many great works of literature were composed. This height lasted until 908 AD, when a great earthquake occurred in Anatolia, causing shockwaves across the empire and starting its downfall. The dynasty finally fell when a civil war broke out between many Greek nobles, and eventually three new dynasties gained power by 1164. By 1264, the Neapolitan and Ragais dynasties had conquered most of the Greek lands, while the Bosporan dynasty was mostly restricted to their integral territories in Bosporia. While these three dynasties were fighting for domination of the Greek world, the Mongols came in and posed the biggest threat to the Greek world since the Persian Empire of old. By 1280, the Mongol Empire conquered the entire Bosporan dynasty, along with most of the Ragais dynasty. Out of the weakened Ragais dynasty came the Meccan and Alexandrian dynasties in Arabia and Egypt, respectively. While the Mongol Empire breaks apart eventually, new Hellenic dynasties gain power in many different parts of the conquered territories. Specifically, a dynasty in Mesopotamia begins to expand and take control of the Greek territories that the Mongol Empire conquered. During the early 1300s, this Babylonian dynasty begins to reform the entire Hellenic Empire, and by 1348, they conquered most of the Greek territories, proclaiming themselves Emperor of the Greeks. During the Babylonian dynasty, many expeditions are sent out to set up trade alliances throughout the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. Eventually, one of these expeditions discovers the Americas. For the first time in over 1,000 years, new Greek colonies are set up in the Americas, centered around the Caribbean and many parts of South America. Other countries, such as the UK and Kalmar Union, also begin to set up colonies in the New World. By the early 1700s, a new Bosporan dynasty rises up against the Babylonians, and for the first time, the Scytho-Greeks are at the head of the Hellenic Empire. This can be compared to how the Manchus overthrew the Ming dynasty, founding the Qing dynasty, as they are closely related to the main ethnic group, but they are not necessarily part of it, while both continue the idea of a unified Chinese or Hellenic Empire. The absolute height of Greek power since the Athenian dynasty occurs in the late 1700s to the early 1800s, where the Greeks control most of the Americas and have trading posts on the African coast. Around the mid 1800s, the Hellenic Empire begins to get passed up by European powers as they begin to industrialize, and the Greeks do not accept industrialization, causing them to fall behind. From the mid 1800s to the mid 1900s, the Chinese had their century of humiliation, which for the first time, fully united China is passed up in power by other powers on the world stage and taken advantage of by these same powers. They were carved up by the Europeans into spheres of influence and were forced to be opened up economically to the world. Something very similar to this happens to the Greeks in this scenario, as the, as they have their own zones of influence inside of them. By 1925, the UK, Germany, Poland, Ethiopia, Russia, and the Indian Confederation all have spheres of influence in the Hellenic Empire. Also, at this point, all of the Greek colonies have either declared independence or been taken over by other powers. Luckily, for the Hellenic Empire, the British become more wary of the German and Russians as they form an alliance and start encroaching on Poland and the Kalmar Union. This tension erupts when a Russian noble is killed while in Poland, and the Russians begin an invasion of Poland. This eventually leads to World War I, with Greece, the UK, the Kalmar Union, and Poland pitted against Germany, Russia, Ethiopia, and the Indian Confederation. This war is a long drawn out war that lasts until 1933, and upon the conclusion, the world order is upended. By the 1960s, the Hellenic Empire has mostly rebounded and is beginning to catch up to other European powers. Long at the beginning of the 1900s, the Greeks had set up a new democratic government, and the Greeks' old colonies also, many of them, became democratic. These colonies began to plead to the Hellenic Empire to pressure the UK and its allies to decolonize the Americas. This pressure to decolonize eventually leads British colonies in America to start revolting, which is then joined by Scandinavian colonies, and eventually the UK, Germany, Poland, and China face off against the Hellenic Empire, Old Greek colonies, Ethiopia, and the Indian and Russian republics. This becomes the largest and most destructive war, lasting from 1968 to 1975. The war comes to an end when China uses nuclear weapons against Russia, and many of China's European allies have already been conquered. At this point, the UK, Germany, Poland, and Nordica, or the Kalmar Union, sue for peace, as to prevent further destruction on the world stage. The peace from this great war is what has set up the modern world order. Nuclear weapons are forbidden to be used in any wars, and the Hellenic Empire, Indian Republic, and Russian Republic have come out on top. Other medium powers are China, the UK, Germany, and Avalon and Heraclea in the Americas. In this modern age, the Hellenic Republic is in a stage of unity, and the idea of a Greek state will almost definitely survive into the future. Next episode, I will be explaining the demographics and the current situation of the Hellenic Empire.